Noir Plasma Chrome Bleed. Unlocking knowledge, inspiring innovation, empowering curious minds.
This website makes learning so easy. I found all my resources here.
Like what you share.
Hey everyone, and a huge welcome to This Explainer. If you're a focused learner looking to truly understand the nuts and bolts of modern agribusiness, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're taking a highly technical research document on commercial orchid cultivation, and we're going to treat it like a step-by-step startup guide. We'll be breaking down how to build a commercial orchid operation from the ground up, moving way past traditional farming and diving straight into the world of high-precision agricultural engineering. All right, here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going on a logical journey from the macroeconomics of the industry boom right down into the nitty-gritty of substrate chemistry. From there, we'll run the financial spreadsheets and finally look at how to safely get the harvest out to the market. Let's just jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the structural transformation and the massive boom in the orchid industry.
To put things into perspective, the sheer scale of the explosion we've seen recently is absolutely wild. In just a 10-year span, national cut flower production for orchids skyrocketed from a tiny 180 metric tons up to an astounding 10,730 metric tons. Historically, you could only really grow these commercially in the humid, subtropical microclimates of the northeastern states, but thanks to some incredible advancements in climate-controlled polyhouses and microirrigation, cultivation has completely broken those geographic boundaries. We're now seeing major production hubs thriving in non-traditional places like Karnataka, Kerala, and Maharashtra. But to actually participate in this boom, we really have to change our mindset. Commercial success here requires viewing your greenhouse not just as a farm, but as a high-precision biological factory. The financial output relies entirely on a strict alignment of your climate controls, your upfront capital, agronomic practices, and your supply chain. It's like a giant, delicate machine. If one gear slips, the whole factory stops. Moving right along to the agronomic foundations in Section 2, climate, crops, and chemistry. Because orchids have incredibly sensitive physiological responses, we have to practically engineer their perfect environment. Take a look at this breakdown. Your baseline regional climate directly dictates both your infrastructure and your crop choice. If you're in a warm, humid tropical zone, say coastal southern India, you can get away with naturally ventilated polyhouses and focus on heat-tolerant genera like Dendrobium and Vanda, which handle temps up to 32 degrees Celsius just fine. But if you want to grow cool climate orchids like Phalaenopsis or Cymbidium, you absolutely need a climatized greenhouse with pad and fan cooling. Why? Well, Phalaenopsis is picky. It strictly requires consecutive nighttime temperature drops down to 10 to 24 degrees just to induce floral spiking. You've got to match your tech to the biology. And that brings us to the root of the matter, literally. Epiphytic orchids have specialized aerial roots covered in something called velamen. Basically, it's a multi-layered, spongy epidermis that's perfectly designed to rapidly suck up atmospheric moisture and dissolved solutes. Because of this total unique anatomy, commercial orchids absolutely require soilless growing systems. If you try to use fine, waterlogged, or anaerobic substrates, it's going to induce rapid root rot from pathogens and lead to total plant death. So because we need soilless systems, commercial growers rely heavily on coconut husk chips. But wait, raw coconut husk is actually a chemical minefield. It has naturally high levels of sodium and potassium, creating high electrical conductivity, or EC, which causes severe salt burn to those delicate roots. So you absolutely have to run this 3-step chemical buffering process. First, a freshwater soak to dissolve surface salts and tannins. Second, a minimum 12-hour soak in calcium nitrate. This is crucial because the calcium ions physically push out and replace the dangerous sodium and potassium. Finally, step 3, a massive clean water rinse until your runoff EC is strictly below 1.0 millisiemens per centimeter. If you skip this, I guarantee you'll lose the crop.
Okay, phase 3. Let's talk money and survival with the dual yield business model.
Here's the biggest operational hurdle in the industry. Tissue-cultured plantlets take 12 to 24 months to produce market-grade cut flowers. That is a massive cash flow drought. And this chart brilliantly illustrates the clever survival tactic growers use to optimize space and survive that gestation period, a 70-30 split.
Let's contrast these two streams to see why this is so genius. 70% of the space goes to potted plants. These can be finished and sent to market in just 6 to 9 months. This fast turnover generates the early cash flow you desperately need to pay your operational bills. Plus, they have a much lower transit risk. Cut flowers, on the other hand, are the 30% long-term play. They take 12 to 24 months for the pseudobulbs to mature enough to yield those high-density spikes. They're definitely more vulnerable to transit damage, but they deliver significantly higher peak margins at full maturity. Basically, the potted plants keep the lights on while the cut flowers build your wealth over time. Which perfectly tees up Section 4, Navigating Costs and Subsidies. Let's break down the heavy upfront capital required.
Looking at these baseline costs for a standard 1-acre setup, you can really see the heavy lifting required here. Between the UV-stabilized polyhouse infrastructure, thousands of tissue-cultured plants, automated fertigation, and raised benches, your initial capital expenditure, or CapEx, lands between a whopping 60 to 67 lakh rupees. And remember, that's just to open the doors. Alongside that, there's an annual operational expenditure of about 12 to 16 lakhs for things like specialized fertilizers, skilled labor, and utilities. But here is the exact timeline of how that massive investment actually pays off. Year 1 is your gestation phase. Output is low, and you're likely operating at a slight deficit. Year 2 is the ramp-up phase, where you finally start scaling output and generating serious gross revenue. But by year 3, that is when the biological factory hits peak maturity. We're talking upwards of 400,000 spikes annually. At this stage, your net operating income can hit anywhere from 46 to 86 lakh rupees a year. So if you model this correctly, you can achieve full capital payback within 3 to 5 years. So the crucial point we need to talk about here is the myth versus reality of institutional subsidies. You'll often see government boards advertising these massive headline subsidies of 50% up to 95%. Sounds amazing, right? Well, actually, those percentages are based on fixed government cost benchmarks because building a true high-precision factory requires high-spec materials that exceed those basic benchmarks. Your actual effective subsidy, the real cash assistance you get, usually drops to about 35% to 40% of your total out-of-pocket spend. The takeaway? Always plan your finances and term loans around that 35% reality, not the advertised hype. All right, moving into the final operational phase, Section 5, Harvesting and Cold Chain. Post-harvest procedures completely dictate your wholesale price at primary markets. Because orchids are so delicate, buyers use a super strict grading matrix. For example, to get that top-tier super long grade, the spike has to be at least 55 centimeters long with up to 15 total buds. And harvesting itself is an exact science. You have to harvest early in the morning when the plant's cell turgor pressure is at its absolute peak, and crucially, you cut the stem when exactly 3 to 5 terminal buds are still unopened. Now, the second you cut that stem, the clock is ticking. The flowers immediately enter a chemical pulsing phase. We use a very specific mix to clear vascular blockages. H-hydroxyquinoline sulfate acts as a bactericide, silver nitrate works as an anti-ethylene agent to stop premature flower drop, and sucrose provides essential carbohydrate energy. After that, they are packed and shipped in a relentless, strict cold chain maintained precisely between 8 and 10 degrees Celsius. If it drops below 5 degrees, no way. You'll cause chilling injury and ruin the petals. Let's bring all this information together for our final synthesis in Section 6, Strategic Keys to Success.
To summarize, here are the absolute non-negotiable rules for a commercial orchid enterprise. 1. Audit your water. If your EC is over 0.5, you have to install reverse osmosis. 2. Never skip the calcium nitrate buffering for your substrate. 3. Strictly match your greenhouse tech to your baseline climate. 4. Use that 70-30 dual yield model to survive the cash flow drought. And 5. Plan your finances around a realistic 35% effective subsidy.
I hope you can see now how biology, engineering, and financial modeling are just permanently intertwined in this industry. So what does this all mean for you? After looking at the exact chemistry, the heavy capital requirements, and the strict environmental controls needed, it all boils down to one fundamental provocative question. Are you preparing to just plant a farm, or are you ready to engineer a high-precision biological factory? Mastering that distinction is exactly what separates the novices from the commercial success stories. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.
Like what you share.
This website makes learning so easy. I found all my resources here.
Noir plasma chrome bleed. Unlocking knowledge, inspiring innovation, empowering curious mind.